Hey, it is Wednesday, March 25th. Today is Matthew 10. I hope you're all ready. Now, heads up, from this video on, I am no longer going to be reading the chapter to you. It made these videos just a little bit too long, and so if you haven't read Matthew 10 yet, I encourage you to go ahead and pause this video, read it, and then come back to this video for the rest, for my reflections on it. If you really are going to miss having someone read the chapter to you, the beauty is you can download the Bible app. It's just called Bible. You download it and you can go to Matthew 10 and there's an option to have someone read it to you. So you can still have that experience. It won't be my, soothing voice reading it to you, but someone could still read it to you that way. So let's dive into some reflections on Matthew 10. It starts off with Jesus officially calling the 12 apostles, is what they call them now. You see, they were already called to follow Jesus. They're already disciples of Jesus, but now he is calling them up and into something more. So after he calls them, what does he do? Well, it's not just this cushy gig where they just sit around and don't do anything extra. No, he called them into something, so he sends them out. And he doesn't just send them out to do whatever they want willy-nilly and hope for the best. No, he gives his 12 apostles very clear instructions. He gives them a clear focus, a message, and a very well-defined purpose. Did you know that God has called you as well? He has called you into a particular purpose. He has given you some instructions. He has given you a focus. But the question is, do you know what that is? If you don't, I encourage you to spend some time praying with God and maybe doing some journaling and discussing with people close to you about what might your purpose be. Because I truly believe each and every one of you has a very clearly defined purpose for the King and the kingdom. Now, Jesus, his instructions for how he sends out these disciples, they're often used in evangelism training. Now, the way I like to try and articulate this, it's something I learned that's been helpful for me, and I want to share it with you in hopes it will be helpful for you as well. And it's using terminology such as seeking persons of peace. That's what we're going to really reflect on today. You see, a person of peace is someone who is prepared to hear the message of the kingdom and the king. If the person is not ready to receive it, they may not be a person of peace. So what do we do? Well, as Jesus instructs his disciples, we shake the dust off our feet and we move on. A lot of times, we may think we're called to share the good news with every single person we encounter. But the reality is, not everyone is ready to receive that good news. So, if that person is indeed a person of peace, we can trust that God has prepared them in advance and has placed them in your path, and that peace, the message, the personal living testimony of all you are and what you are sharing with these people will be received. And God will actively be at work in that person, in that conversation, in that interaction. You see, once we start to view others as potential persons of peace, it allows us to kind of gauge receptivity and connectiveness with those people. We can then see how God provides us the words to say in those moments. Just as Jesus says, he says here in chapter 10, 19 and 20, do not be anxious how you're to speak or what you are to say. For what you are to say will be given to you in that hour. For it's not you who speak, but the Spirit of your Father speaking through you. What I like about this idea of persons of peace and that God has prepared them in advance and that God will give you the words to say, as all this is outlined in Matthew 10, is that it takes the fear and the pressure off of evangelism. Because we see that it's really God who does the heavy lifting. In fact, he does most of the work. Here's another truth about this. Just as Jesus instructs his disciples, we also know that no amount of coercion on our part can make someone become a person of peace. Have you ever tried that? Like, it doesn't go well. You see, it's the job of the Holy Spirit. We cannot try and force open doors that God has not opened. And we must not be distracted, or dare I say, too self-centered, so we miss the doors that God has opened. Because God does most of the work. It's our job to just walk through life with our eyes open and our ears listening to the Spirit as He reveals to us the persons of peace that He has already prepared. So our prayer each day as we walk through the world ought to be, Lord, bring in my path today a person of peace and give me the grace to speak your words to that person. Now, this might be a little more difficult, right? When we are socially distant and we're keeping our community safe by staying in our homes. But I do wonder, and this leads into the questions, what person of peace may God have placed in your circles that you could reach out to today? Take a few minutes, jot down just the people in your life, just whatever names come to your mind, and jot those down. And then I encourage you to pray for those people and pray over those people. And through this process, you may be prompted to reach out to one of those individuals during this process. One of those names may just kind of jump out and kind of keep popping in your mind throughout this. I would encourage you to trust that that is the Holy Spirit guiding you in that nudging, to then reach out in some small but meaningful way to that individual. The next question for you is, Jesus talks a lot about persecution and the dividing nature of following him in the sections for the remainder of chapter 10, and how it's a great sacrifice to follow him, that even it will divide us between family and friends for those that don't view similarly. Anyone who's followed Jesus for any length of time knows the truth of what Jesus is teaching. Yes, following him, we know, comes with immense sacrifice, but what we gain is so much better than what we lose. So the question is this: what have you sacrificed to follow God? And what have you gained by following God? But then, the harder question, what might you need to sacrifice to grow deeper in your walk with God today? Hope you consider these questions. I'd love to also hear what else stood out to you from this chapter. There was a lot in there, and we just focused on one small part. Tomorrow is chapter 11. Looking forward to that. I hope you're all having a great day. Hope you're staying safe. See you tomorrow. Thanks.